Imagine that you are a golem who has to protect the forest, and there are only a few years left until the end of your existence, but suddenly you come across a human girl. You will have to take care of her and find her a family before your time runs out. This is the story of a golem whose name has been forgotten over time. This golem is the guardian of the forest, and the only objective of its creation is to protect and safeguard it. But it does not intervene in the food chain. It only observes the flow of nature. The golem knows that its life consists of this, and it's okay with that. It doesn't expect anything more from life and doesn't intrude on others' lives until a particular event unfolds before its eyes, as it finds a little girl chained under a tree, who, upon seeing it, calls it Dad. With no other option, the golem decides to intervene and take care of her, naming her Somali. They both develop a pretty normal father-daughter relationship, and Somali is sure that he is her dad. In addition to protecting the forest, the golem decides to take care of her and asks her to never stray too far from him. One day, they walk far from the forest and see a city in the distance. Somali gets excited about the city's prosperity and wants to play with the cats and greet the monster people, but the golem reminds her to be cautious. After exploring the place, they stop at a tavern so Somali can eat something, since the golem doesn't need to eat as it only feeds on water, oxygen, and sunlight. When the people there see a golem, they are surprised, as it's normal for golems to never come down from the forest, and what they find even stranger is that it's with a minotaur girl. Everyone starts asking them questions to find out why this strange gathering is happening, and the golem tells them that they have come out of the forest because they are looking for humans. However, none of the monsters in the area have seen humans in a long time, just a few in the market ready to be eaten, but nothing more. Humans and strange beings lived far apart, unaware of each other. They began to interact, although the monsters were eager, while humans called them grotesque. Monsters were shocked by the prejudice of weak humans. Hatred spread, leading to war. Humans were defeated and fled. This surprised the monsters a lot because they couldn't understand how such weak creatures could be so prejudiced. The ideas of hating others began to spread more and more, until finally a war broke out and the humans were defeated and fled. Since then, that world has been a peaceful world, free of humans. After the war, a hunt for surviving humans was unleashed, and they were used as pets or food. That night, father and daughter have to stay in a room to spend the night, although the golem isn't very happy about it. In his solitude, the golem tells Somali that he will fix her horned hood, because if they find out that the horns are fake and that she is actually a human, she won't survive. The next day, with the horns fixed, they both go shopping, and Somali can't help but get excited about everything she sees in the park. It makes her sad to see how other families show more affection, with parents and children holding hands, something that she and the golem never do because the golem practically has no emotions. At one point, they both head to a jewelry and precious stones shop, and the seller doesn't want to pay the golem a significant amount for its stones, so they start arguing with each other. The golem shows an analytical eye and explains that he can see the purity of each stone and material from nature, so he can verify that 80% of the jewelry and precious stones in the shop are fakes, and therefore he should be paid what he deserves. While this is happening, Somali gets distracted watching a cat through the window and runs off to chase it in the middle of the market, not following the only rule the golem has, which is to not stray away from him. When the golem finally manages to get paid what he deserves, he realizes that Somali is gone and stands on a tall building to look for her. Meanwhile, Somali follows the cat until she gets trapped in an inner courtyard with the cat, and suddenly it starts to talk, and she realizes that it's not an ordinary cat. Then the cat starts to sniff her and in a rather creepy way claims that the girl smells delicious and that scent reminds him of something. Before the situation gets worse, the golem appears to save her, and the cat runs away in fear. Somali thanks the golem, but assures Allegre that she knew he would come to save her. Later, the golem explains that he needs to be more careful, because if they find out she's a human, he doesn't know if he'll be able to save her. Then he emphasizes that he has no emotions, but he is very observant and learns from human behaviors, which is why he offers his hand so she won't get lost, just like he has seen other parents do with their children and Somali. Somali happily doesn't let go of him. The golem takes care of the girl, but every moment he's without her, he can't help but look at his arm, which is getting worse every day, as his final years are drawing near and his body is starting to crumble. As they leave the city, Somali and the golem camp in the forest as usual, usual, although the golem interferes as little as possible with nature, he taught Somali how to fish so she can catch her own food, and he also teaches her how to make fire, while Somali happily eats her roasted fish, unaware that someone is watching them from the bushes. Later, two rabbits approach them, and while Somali hugs them, the golem asks if there's any civilization nearby. He then explains to Somali that being able to talk and communicate with animals is an essential part of his job because it's necessary to keep the forest safe. While playing with the rabbit, Somali trips and injures her knee deeply, so despite the golem's care, it doesn't heal quickly, and they have run out of medicine. At that moment, by chance, the woman who had been watching them appears, offering medicine. The golem recognizes her as one from the Oni clan, and confesses that he had already seen her spying on them. The woman introduces herself as Shizuno, a dwarf Oni, and claims that she was watching them because it's not normal to come across golems out there, and it piqued her curiosity. Shizuno uses an ointment to heal Somali's knee, and then invites them to her house for better care, but not before closely examining the golem's body. After a few minutes of walking, they arrive at Shizuno's house in the middle of the forest, and the golem wonders if there's any civilization nearby, but before he can answer, Yabashira comes out of the house, angry with Shizuno, and accidentally throws tomatoes at our protagonist. After some fights between them, Shizuno applies more ointment to Somali's knee and then wraps it up, making it as good as new. After this, Yabashira prepares a delicious snack for them with cake and tea as an apology for having thrown tomatoes at them just minutes earlier. Somali enjoys the delicious sweets from Yabashira, and he explains to her that he is Shizuno's assistant, but he really loves to cook. The golem asks Shizuno if she would teach him the art of making medicine, since it's super necessary for them as they travel constantly and often run out of it. Shizuno says she will do it in exchange for a part of the golem's body, as she wants to learn from golem bodies for her medical studies. The golem removes a small fragment from his arm and hands it to Shizuno. On the other hand, Somali feels sad because she thinks it hurts, but the golem assures her that golems don't feel pain once the deal is closed. The next day, Shizuno starts the medicine classes while Somali helps Yabashira with the household chores. The first thing Shizuno teaches him is how to make an ointment with a pest that can be found everywhere. Then the golem asks her to teach him how to make medicine for a cold, and Shizuno shows him step by step, although she doesn't seem to be a very careful Oni. After a long while, Yabashira tells Somali that she doesn't need to keep helping him and should take the chance to go play. But Somali explains that she wants to keep helping because the golem always helps her and she wants to do the same for him. Then she remembers the moment when the golem removed a fragment from his arm. Throughout the day, Somali helps Bashira water the plants, organize books, and clean windows. While the golem continues making medicine, Shizuno asks him why he has so much clothing and cloth on him, because he wants to prevent his body from continuing to deteriorate. The golem assures her that yes, but it's not something that can be stopped. He explains to them that when he saw Somali get sad and cry, it made him feel something in a part of his chest, as if he had a heart, even though golems don't have feelings. But the pain was so great that he decided to learn medicine so that Somali wouldn't have that expression on her face anymore. Shizuno tries to explain to him that what he felt was the breaking of his heart, but the golem denies it, reaffirming that golems don't have feelings. That night, Somali sleeps. The Onis question the golem's departure. He seeks her parent. The golem shows his deteriorating body. He has limited time to find Somali's parent. The golem takes off his clothes and shows them that a large part of his body has already started to fall apart, and under the golem's stone there are plants. He explains that golems live for 1,000 years and die exactly on the last day of those 1,000 years, and he has already lived for 998 years and 253 days. So he only has 1 year and 112 days left to find Somali's parent. The next day, our protagonists leave, and besides the medicines, they also take off. Bashira hands Somali a big bag of sweets. Somali asks the golem if he will make her more when they run out, and the golem assures her that he will try. Our protagonists continue their journey, and civilization seems very far away. Somali is always cheerful, even though she's so hungry that she's sniffing the empty bag of sweets. To calm down, Somali asks if they can go by carriage, but the golem tells her that their travel funds are very limited, so they will have to walk, which the girl doesn't take well. But after so much time walking in the desert, their strength starts to run out. Fortunately, they manage to reach a city called Anthill City, which looks more like a bustling market for travelers than an actual city. Before crossing a longer desert, the golem explains that the city is named that way because its structure resembles an anthill, so if someone gets lost in its streets, it's very likely they won't be able to find their way back. This frightens Somali, who promises not to stray from the golem for even a second. While the golem sells jewelry at very low prices, Somali walks around and moves excitedly at the sight of colorful lights, but then a kind of evil wolf treats her harshly, and Somali, scared, rushes back to the golem's side. The vendor tells the golem that the city is well stocked, which is why he pays little for his precious stones, because it's easy to find work to earn money in this city. The golem hears the growl in Somali's stomach and decides that they will use some of the money they have left to buy her a meal. However, when they go to the tavern, it's empty, and then Somali sees a box moving. When she chases it, she finds a creature underneath it. Then the father comes out of the tavern and scolds him, calling him Kikila. Later, the father tells them that they are from the Shurigara clan and introduces himself as Kokilila. While they share a meal, Kokili explains that his wife hurt her back, and that's why his son was going to help them with the family business. But clearly Kikila doesn't feel like working, so he was trying to escape without being seen. When the golem hears that they need employees and coincidentally he has no money, he decides to work there for 1 or 2 days to earn some extra income, but on the condition that Somali stays inside the tavern the whole time he's working. While the golem is doing his thing, Somali plays with Kikila, and then she hears him singing a song about the strange human visitor who came from distant land. Once the tavern is open to the public, the golem starts serving the table, showing great skill. Once again, the customers are surprised to see the golem and ask why it is passing by. The golem explains that he is looking for humans, and the customers say they've heard a traveler talk about humans, a traveler who is at the far west of the Ozuna Desert. Kikila is delighted with the golem, but also with the fact that he gets to play with Somali, so he asks if they will come back to visit them when their journey is over. For the first time, Somali thinks about the possibility that their journey might come to an end. The golem finds out what he needs to cross the desert in search of this information, and seeing that it's too expensive, he decides to work a few more days at the tavern. Somali misses playing with her father, so she asks to play, but the golem explains, a bit tired, that he can't play because he's working. Then Kikila tells Somali to sneak out and play outside the tavern, but the golem sees them and scolds them, which makes Somali sad again. Her father has been working a lot lately and doesn't have time for her, plus everything he does is to finish their journey, which makes Somali incredibly sad. The next day, Kikila has some errands to run and asks Somali to accompany him. After thinking it over, the golem lets Somali go with him, as he is the first friend he has made on the whole journey and doesn't want to let that go. While they eat some sweets, Somali starts to cry and explains to Kikila her worry that her father wants to end the journey quickly to leave her and never see her again. Then Kikila tells her about a legend that says there is a flower beneath the ant city, and whoever finds it can make a wish. They both decide to go to ask for Somali's wish, but then the wolf that scolded her on the first day is watching them from a distance. The two kids decide to go down to the place with the shiny stones that Somali had seen on the first day. Kikila asks about the relationship he has with the golem because they are clearly from different clans, so he couldn't be his father. And Somali explains to him that for her, he is her father because he protects her, takes care of her, and is always there for her. Then they follow the trail of some butterflies until they reach a garden full of magical flowers. There, Somali picks one to make her wish, but then a giant mushroom is about to attack her. At that moment, the wolf shoots an arrow at the evil mushroom, which quickly flees and then looks angrily at the girl, claiming that he has finally found her. The golem continues with his work as a waiter, but he has stopped doing things as perfectly as he always does because he is too worried about Somali and can't think of anything else. Meanwhile, underground, the wolf is walking ominously towards Somali, but Kikila jumps excitedly to hug him, calling him Master Mutrika. The teacher scolds him for going down there without an adult, as he always warns him that it's dangerous. Somali is stunned, but Kikila explains that he is the master of an organization that oversees the underground area, as everyone who goes down there must do so under his supervision and guidance. During this conversation, Somali's flower starts to wilt, and she just feels sad. The master master moves the earth and shows them that what shines and keeps the flowers alive are the roots of the tsuchiami tree as they feed on its sap. So, the flowers live for a short time without the nourishment from these roots, and the smaller the tree, the less nourishment its roots have. Kikila then suggests going deeper into the underground area, looking for a bigger tree with more sap to take some flowers from there. The master warns her that he won't allow it because it's getting more dangerous, but Somali refuses to go back without her flower because she wants to make the wish to be with her dad forever. The master explains to them that the underground area is larger than the city, and even his organization hasn't managed to explore it all. But since Somali has decided to try anyway, the master has no choice but to guide them to avoid more serious issues. For a long time, they face different obstacles until they finally reach where the tsuchiami tree is. Then they come across giant mushroom spores, and the master tells them that the tree is beneath those spores. The kids jump until they are finally in front of the tree. Somali picks a flower, but at that moment, a giant monster that looks like a frog appears, ready to finish them off. Kiki stands in front of Somali and starts growling to scare the monster away, but it doesn't work. Somali explains to the monster that she needs the flower to always be with her dad, and the monster ends up leaving without causing any harm. Then the master explains that it is a tsuchi lizard, the guardians of the tsuchiami, who are the ones that protect the flowers. So if it lets her go with the flower, it means that Somali's wish will be granted. Somali returns to the tavern excited and shows the flower to the golem, but her happiness is overshadowed because the golem scolds her for coming back at night when he told her he would only allow it if she returned before dusk. He then explains that if she doesn't follow the rules he set, she won't be able to travel with him anymore. Somali can only break down in tears, throwing the flower to the ground and leaving to her room crying. Kilo tries to talk to her, but Somali doesn't even respond. Meanwhile, the master tells the golem that there is a legend that tells the story of blah blah blah, and that Somali jumped into its dark place because she believes in that legend and just wants to travel with her dad. The golem doesn't believe in those things, but the master explains that Somali does, and that he should take her feelings into account. Before leaving, he tells him that a father should never inspire fear in his children, which leaves the golem deep in thought. At that moment, Kikila runs to tell them that something is happening to her, and they see that she is on the ground with a high fever and barely able to speak. The golem tries to feed her something, but Somali doesn't want to, and our protagonist insists because her body needs nutrients, and then Somali starts to cry. The golem runs through the night to buy medicine, thinking about how the poor girl has had to endure a lot of burden, not just physical ones like walking in a desert, but also psychological ones, and he never realized what that was doing to her body. When he arrives in town, he can't say that the medicine he needs is for humans, so he asks for a medicine that works for all clans. The seller tells him that the medicine is extremely expensive, and the golem uses all his savings from working at the tavern to buy it. When he arrives at the tavern, he gives the medicine to Somali, and the girl starts to improve little by little. Then he tells Kokilila that it's all his fault because he was so rushed to make the trip that he didn't take care of the little one. Kokilila tells him that all parents make mistakes and that what he needs to do is show her that he loves and cares for her. So both of them mature and improve their relationship as father and daughter. Somali wakes up and asks Golem to hold her hand, and the golem apologizes for what happened and stays with her until she falls asleep. The next day, Somali wakes up and the golem tells her that he will work a bit longer at the tavern. When Somali finds out that he spent all his money on the medicine, she starts crying because she feels guilty, but the golem tells her that money can be earned back, but she is irreplaceable. Somali breaks down in tears and asks him that even when their journey ends, he stays with her forever, and the golem promises that he will, while the flower still shines on Somali's bed after having granted her wish. After some time working and managing to save a little money, Somali and the golem continue their journey, while Kira cries inconsolably. But Somali reassures him, saying that her dad promised they would make the whole trip together so they could come back to visit them. With the money they saved up, our protagonists can indulge in some luxuries, like traveling through the desert in a cart instead of walking as much as they had done before. After a hot journey, they both arrive at the village of Copa de Vino, a meeting point for travelers located in the center of an extinct volcano. The first thing they do upon arriving in the village is go to a tavern to eat. A man gives them a bowl with a liquid which seems strange to the golem, but a woman comments that it's a local tradition. The legend says that once a group of travelers before the city existed gathered there in the hole of the extinct volcano. One of them was a wine seller, so he shared his wares with the others and they had a feast for some reason. Then all the travelers crossed the desert safely, and since then it has become a custom to share drinks to pray for a safe journey, as there are dangerous tornadoes known as dragon whirlwinds in that area. Since it's alcohol, Somali can't drink. The seller offers her ice cream, but there's only one portion. Another woman argues with Somali for it. As she approaches Somali, she realizes something, and Hitora scolds her, calling her Uso. Somali asks for it since she asked first, but the woman starts to argue with Somali in a childish way. When she gets closer to Somali to pinch her cheek, she seems to realize something about her, and then Hitora appears to scold her, calling her Uso. After the apologies, they split the ice cream in half, but Zoe ends up giving her part to Somali. Then Aether explains that they are traveling in a cart in search of medicine because he has health issues and is looking for a cure. In response to his companion's question, Golem assures them that they are traveling in search of humans because Golem studies humans, and the search is for research purposes. Somali thanks Usoi for the ice cream and tells her that she's really nice. Usoi then suggests that they join them in their cart for the journey in exchange for helping to load and unload some of their goods. Later, Aitora asks what the invitation was about, and Usoi explains that Somali smelled just like him, which means she is also human. When Usoi takes off Aitora's bird mask, we see that he is a human with part of his face covered in feathers or something that is starting to spread across his face. Usoi explains that he has a plan for what to do with their new companions when they are in the middle of the desert, and Aitora is horrified to hear his plan. When he makes a sudden movement, he starts to deteriorate, and Usoi tells him that they have to go through with it. The next day, they finish getting ready to go to the desert, and Usoi can't help but look at Somali with pity, but he has to do what he needs to do for the journey. Somali is really excited and keeps asking questions all the time, which annoys Zoe a lot. When they are in the middle of the desert, they get caught in a sandstorm and Somali almost falls off the cart, but Zoe manages to grab her by the arm before that happens, explaining that they need her alive. Somali takes this as a sign of affection towards her, but she clearly has no idea what awaits her. While they struggle with the storm, they see a sandfish circling around them, threatening. Aether uses a weapon and manages to hit it, causing it to flee and allowing them to escape as well. They finally manage to get past the fish and the storm, and together they make a great team, cutting a cactus to make food, preparing it, lighting a fire, and chatting. Then they continue on their way, and Usoi shows them a device that basically signals when they are near a cave. They finally arrive at the cave and decide to spend the night there. While the men set up the tent to sleep, Usoi and Somali walk through the cave and catch fireflies to use as a source of light. Alone, Usoi asks her what her relationship with Ol is, and Somali explains that even though they are from different clans, he is her dad because he is her dad. Usoi tells her that in the Pia clan, they don't have fathers, only mothers, and that she never knew hers because Aitora told her that she passed away from an illness. Usoi gives a speech about how much he loves Aitora, and Suma assures him that they are the same because she loves her dad deeply within herself. Usoi laments that he cares so much for Aitora that he would do anything to help him, even if it means hurting Somali. Aitora asks Golem if his search for humans has anything to do with Somali, and Golem decides to avoid that question. Usoi takes her away under the pretense of looking for water, and then he traps her on the ground, telling her that he needs the red liquid flowing through her veins because it can cure Aitora's condition, so he has to end her. Meanwhile, Aitora is on the ground, sicker than ever, and he confesses to Golem that he knows Somali is human because is too... So he asks Golem for help to heal his condition, but he also tells him that they need to stop Usoi because he wants to hurt Somali. While Aitori and Golem run to find the two girls, Aitor explains his situation. He and Usoi spent a long time searching for a cure for his illness, but the days passed and they found no solution, until one day they found a fortune teller's hut in the middle of nowhere. When they spoke with her, the fortune teller told them that Aitora's red blood cells had been corrupted, and that's why it would be impossible to find peace until they were purified, and this could only be done with a completely new red liquid. Basically, that's why Zoe wants to take all the ketchup out of Somali's body. While Susoi tells Somali that she must end her, the little girl, knowing that harpies have very sensitive ears, screams loudly and manages to escape from her, but Usoi starts to chase her. In her escape, Somali falls into the water and panics because she doesn't know how to swim. Usoi rescues her, and they both sit silently by the water. Somali can't stop sneezing from the cold water, and Usoi uses one of her wings to cover her. The harpy apologizes for what she did, and then explains the truth about Aitora's identity and his condition. The golem arrives with them and asks Somali if she was hurt, but the little girl assures him that she just got wet and that Usoi saved her, so she can't be mad at her. Usoi breaks down in tears and tells Aitora that she's sorry, but she couldn't do the terrible things she had said, even if it was to save him. Aitora and Aitora are glad that it is so. Later, both girls share the tent to sleep, and Somali tells Usui that she forgives her because they are friends. Aitora apologizes to the golem, but he understands because he knows it was behavior, motivated by love, and that's the nature of a family. Then Aitora tells him that he can't consider himself family because he has done something terrible, and confesses that it makes sense that the things on his face are similar to Usoi's feathers because Aitora ate Usoi's mother. Aitora used to be a man who just wanted to live with other humans, away from the eyes of the grotesques, as humans call the monsters. But one day, they attacked his home. The grotesques hunted and captured them. Fortunately, he and his family managed to hide in a cave, but as the days went by, the lack of water and food, along with the fear of being caught by the grotesque, began to take a heavy toll on them. One day, Aitora decided to go out and look for some food and found a harpy searching for fruits. Terrified, Aitora struck the harpy with a rock until he took her life and brought her body back to his family, saying that to survive, they must become monsters like the grotesque and thus be able to feed on them. His family, in fear, decides that Aitora is right, and so they begin to eat, but they quickly start to grow feathers all over their bodies in a painful way until they lose their life. For some reason, Aitora only contracted part of the disease and ended up in the state he is in now. While he lamented for his daughter and his wife, she appeared calling for her mother, so Aitora had no choice but to take care of her. Aitora tells this to the golem, unaware that Usoi is listening to everything behind the door, and Usoi's heart breaks upon realizing that Aitora has been lying to her all this time. The next day, they continue their road trip and Usoi is completely devastated, but she doesn't say anything to Aitora. So in the middle of their journey, they encounter a dragon whirlwind that throws Uso and Somali out. Usoi manages to grab onto the side of the road, but seeing Aitora's eyes, she gets angry about the lie and lets go, taking Somali with her. Later, both wake up safe and sound, but far from everything. Somali explains, fully understanding what's going on, that love doesn't lie, and it's clear that Usoi loves Aitora just as much as Somali loves her dad. The men, for their part, talk on the road, and Aitora realizes that Usoi has heard the conversation from the night before, so nothing will ever be the same again. The golem tells him that he must confront his sins and have a serious conversation with Usoi. Then they see a giant bug chasing the two girls and decide to go help them. The golem had said that he would be the bait, but seeing Usoi in danger, Aitora decides to be the bait instead, because he doesn't have much time left to live anyway, and he needs to repay Usoi for everything he did. When Aitora falls to the ground with the monster on top of him, he's ready to die to pay for his sins, but the golem and Usoi manage to scare the monster away. Usoi tells him that he can't end his life to escape his responsibilities, and crying, begs him to stay with her, as that will be his punishment. Aitora promises that he will, and they both hug. But after all this, they both get ready, and Somali tells Usoi that she shouldn't be sad because Aitora made a promise to always be by her side. After this, they continue their journey. The two girls enjoy the taste of the sugar canes while the men look at the map and figure out what they need to do to continue their journey. Aitora assures that they will be able to finish crossing the desert by the next day, but the golem is worried because they are making this whole journey to find humans based on a rumor they heard. However, after crossing the desert, it seems likely that the humans might have been able to cross it too. That night, Somali asks Usoi why the humans left, since she is a human but knows nothing about what happened. Usoi tells her that there are other things because of the war, but decides not to go into detail about it. While they sleep, the golem can only remember the promise he made to Somali to always be by her side, knowing that he won't be able to keep it because the cracks in his body grow larger every day. Aitora decides to accompany him and thanks him for everything he has done for him, as it made him want to stay with Usoi and be by her side until the end of his life. Then he tells him that he envies him for being able to be with Somali forever, and the golem confesses that not only can he not be with her forever, but he only has 301 days left to live. Therefore, he needs to take Somali to the humans as soon as possible. Aitora tells him that even though he doesn't know know anything about humans, he knows of a village to the west of the desert that holds knowledge from all over the world, and so the golem decides that will be their next destination. The next day, they continue their journey and can already feel the air starting to cool as they move away from the desert. Usoy reminds Somali that they will soon be parting ways, and Somali insists that she would like to stay with them longer. But Usoy tells her that once they find the cure for Aitora, they will meet again. A few hours later, Aitora and Usoy leave our protagonists by a river with directions on how to get to the village Aitora mentioned earlier. Thus, our protagonists continue on their own path as they had been doing until they finally arrive at a colorful village. As soon as they arrive, all the witches in the place offer Somali different foods and drinks, and she is totally grateful to be there, stuffing herself with food after having gone so long without eating. Later, he goes to a building where the repository of all the knowledge in the world is located. There, they meet the librarian, Hazel, and the golem explains that they are there because they are looking for the whereabouts of the human. Hazel pulls out a book from her pocket that expands at that moment and leads them to where the information about humans is supposed to be, while telling them that the witch clan loves knowledge and the world, so their goal is to protect all existing knowledge. However, when they arrive at the place where it should be, the book has disappeared. Our protagonists are worried, but Hazel says that there are book mice that take things without permission, and then she heads to a dusty room where her sister Praline is. Hazel tells her sister to return the book about humans, but she has so many books piled up that they have to search for them one by one. Upon discovering the spine of the book, Somali finds it, but as she pulls it out of its place, she encounters the book-eating fish that want to attack her. Fortunately, she is saved by a little animal that destroys the fish, and Heiser explains to her that book-eating fish are their worst enemies because they feed on old paper and ink, so they have to fight them all the time to prevent them from destroying their precious book. Then, the two witches use their powers to destroy the large number of book-eating fish that are destroying the place. However, even though they think they have destroyed all of them, a giant book-eating fish forms again, much larger than all the others. Despite using magic, the witches can't defeat it, and the fish seems completely determined to eat the book about humans. The golem tells Somali to drop the book, but Somali insists that she won't because the information in it is very important. Despite that, the fish attacks and she drops the book. When it tries to attack again, the golem steps in between Somali and the fish, but the fish's strike causes a large part of the rock covering its arm to shatter. The golem pulls out a kind of wings made of rock or bone and uses them to destroy the fish, to the astonished eyes of everyone present, as they can't believe how extraordinary golems can be. With that matter resolved, Praline sees the book and realizes that it can no longer be read because the fish ruined it. Meanwhile, Somali cries because she thinks the blow to the golem must have hurt a lot, and it's all her fault for wanting to protect her. But the golem explains that the important thing is that she is okay. The witches check the records to see who borrowed it before them to find out if anyone can give them some information. And upon seeing the last person, it turns out to be Isolda, the head librarian of the place, who took it 304 years ago. Hazel explains that witches in general live for 150 years, but the most important ones can live much longer. However, the head librarian is in very poor health, so it's not possible to talk to her. The witches ask why she is so interested in knowing about humans, and Somali hugs Praline, pleading for them to help. The witches look touched, and Praline hands them a book that has maps of the entire library. The golem and Somali start to explore the gigantic library, and just when they think they're about to arrive, they see some beings floating in the air. The golem doesn't recognize what kind of creatures they are, but then they start making alarm-like noises. In the library, everyone starts running in fear because they have discovered intruders, and the witches grab their weapons to go after the invaders. However, Hazel and her sister aren't too worried because they know they've just found their friends. The golem picks up Somali in his arms and starts running because those beings, besides being alarms, also attack them to stop them. With no other option, the golem jumps into the water and manages to surface in just a few seconds. There is the voice of the head librarian, but then a group of witches threatens them because they have entered a restricted area. However, the head librarian tells them to let them pass so they can talk to them. So our protagonists can see Isolda. Even though her voice sounds perfectly fine, her body looks completely destroyed. She is connected to different machines to keep her alive. Isolda then tells them that she she was the one who wrote that book that our protagonists were looking for, and in doing so, she condemned humans to extinction. Then she begins to tell the story of what was in the book and the encounter of her ancestor Fyodora Nepsol with humans. Fyodora was flying on her broomstick to the island of witches when a strong wind made her fall. When she wakes up, Fyodora finds herself surrounded and cared for by humans from Jaraiso, the largest city in the region. The humans explain to her that Mia and Mr. Jaraiso found her passed out on the ground, and that's why they brought her there to take care of her. Then she meets Mr. Haraizo, who is a golem, and the humans explain that for them, Haraizo is like a god because he provides them with a place to live. Even though he looks different from everyone else, they have no reason to fear him. Fyodora isn't worried and just comments that it's normal for them to be of different species. Upon hearing this, the kind humans start to become hostile and ask if she is human. Fyodora panics, but Jaraisu appears to assure her that she is just another human. Haraisu then explains to Fyodora that humans are cowards and weak, and every time they find something that escapes their worldview, they begin to fear and only remain calm until they eliminate them. That's why he tells her that no one should find out that she isn't human, or she will suffer the same fate. Fyodora starts to cry, but Haraizo assures her that he will take care of her. So in the following days, Fyodora tries to pass as just another human, and becomes closer friends with Mia, the girl who found her. After a while, Haraizo explains that what brought her there was a dragon whirlwind, and that there will be another one just like it the next day, so if she manages to get into it, she can return home. Fyodora feels happy, but at the same time she feels sad because she had started to get along well with the humans, and didn't want to leave them. But Mia finds out that Fyodora is leaving the next day, and she starts to cry. Fyodora explains to her that she will always be her friend, but then the bells ring, alerting them to a grotesque creature that has arrived there. Mia and Fyodora see what's happening and meet a dragon that claims it means no harm and wants freedom. Terrified, humans decide to kill the dragon. Later, they throw rocks at its corpse in anger. Fyodora panics, knowing if they discover she's not human, they'll do the same to her. Later, when it is no longer alive, humans will throw rocks at it in anger. Fyodora sees all of this and panics because she knows that if they find out she's not human, they will do the same to her. So that night, she looks for her broom and her witch outfit and hides in a tree to wait for the whirlwind. All the humans start to worry and search for Fyodora because she has disappeared, and Mila finds her because she knows it's her favorite spot. So that night, she looks for her broom and her witch outfit and hides in a tree to wait for the whirlwind. All the humans start to worry and search for Fyodora because she has disappeared, and Mila finds her because she knows it's her favorite spot. Then a strong whirlwind wind throws Mila over a cliff, and she is only held up by a branch. All the humans show up at the scene, and seeing that Mia is about to fall, they panic. The branch starts to break, and Fyodora knows that if it breaks completely, Mia will lose her life. So she hops on her broom and flies to save Mia just before she hits the ground. But the humans see everything and start to insult her because she tricked them by pretending to be human, and now they have to get rid of her. Haraizo appears at the scene and tells her that since she saved Mia, she can leave without being harmed, and Mia starts to cry, saying that she is her friend, even though the humans tell her not to get close because she's a monster. That's what happened to Fyodora. Then she returned to the land of witches and told that story to her successor, hoping that someone would remember it and that the hatred between humans and other beings would dissolve so they could live in harmony. But when Isolda heard this story, she wrote the book, and that's why she believes that from that moment on, she ruined the possibility for humans and other beings to live in peace, since from that point on, all beings started to hate humans. The golem tells her that she didn't ruin anything and that it all seems like just a series of coincidences. Somali asks if those humans will be like her, and Solda assures her that they will be. Then she asks Somali if she's afraid of monsters, and Somali assures her that she's not, and in fact, she has many friends. Solda tells her that everything will be fine because she has created the heart, and she says that they are looking for humans at the end of the world, and thanks them for finally meeting her, as they lifted the burden off her shoulders, and after these words, she can finally rest in peace. Our protagonists continue on their way and find themselves in the middle of a forest under heavy rain. Some Alizo plays and has fun, but Golem wants to hurry things up because he doesn't have much time left to live. So they find a treehouse and decide to stay there, but they are surprised to enter and see that there's nothing inside. Then Golem explains that with the sap from the trees in that place, they produce tree sugar. So it seems like there's a lot of extraction going on there since they later sell it as candy. He assumes that the workers, who are the ones who work there, use that house to live in during the extraction period. While Golem looks at the map to see how much further further they have to go to the end of the world, Somali finds a cookbook and hands it to Golem. They both start reading, and Somali asks her to cook something for her, so she spends the rest of the afternoon baking a big cake. Golem leaves money on the table for the ingredients used and for the lodging. Later, Somali falls asleep on the table, and when she wakes up, the cake is already ready. The little girl tells the Golem that she's very happy he is her father, and then she takes a bite of the first thing Golem cooked for her. Despite the delicious taste, Somali feels like crying, as if Golem's feelings have transferred into the cake. After the first bite, Somali realizes that a tooth has come loose, but when she tries to tell Golem, he asks her to be quiet because it seems like someone is approaching. The Golem waits near the doors while O'Malley hides, and a few minutes later, someone knocks on the door asking for asylum. Then they realize that it's Yashira and Shizuno, the Oni they met in the first part of their journey. After being happy about the reunion, Somali shows the Onis the cake that Golem made, and they all eat together, but Somali tries to hide that her tooth has come loose. The next day, our protagonists accompany the Onis to look for what they need, and they find that the city is quite wild and hostile, as it has a black market, so it's full of raiders and thieves. Shizuno explains that they are there because the best dentist of all lives there, and she wants to learn medicine from him. The Golem talks about having read a book that says damaged teeth should be extracted, and Somali goes into a panic because she doesn't want to lose her tooth. So they arrive at the dentist's place and find that the doctor is a little mouse who explains step by step how to extract a tooth, which only makes Somali more scared. The Golem has noticed Somali's strange behavior and asks her what's wrong and if it has something to do with her mouth, which she is covering all the time. Somali runs away because she doesn't want to have her tooth taken out, but in her escape, she trips over some bandits. The bandits see that Golem is behind her and tell her that she has to pay Wayo $1,000 so they won't destroy her. The Golem tells them he doesn't have that amount, and the bandits insist that they run things there because they are the strongest, so they have to pay them no matter what. Then Bashira starts hitting them, and the Golem does his part too. One of the bandits decides to go after the women because they are small and, well, women, but Shizuno asks Somali to step aside while she takes care of it. However, Somali runs away so scared that she trips and her tooth falls out, and then she starts to cry. Shizuno explains that it's a baby tooth, so it will grow back, and then the mouse gives her a little box for her tooth, and the Golem decides to keep it as a memento of what happened. Later that same night, a man who learns that they have defeated the bandits offers them a deal to be the guardians of his inn for a few days, and he will let them stay there for free. When Somali falls asleep, Shizuno confesses to Golem that she knows Somali is human and wonders why he takes care of her as if he were her father. The Golem tells Shizuno how he decided to be Somali's father. One day, I was walking through the forest as usual when I came across a group of lifeless beings, and behind them, a load of humans locked up and also lifeless. As they keep walking, a cat leads the Golem, and he finds Somali chained up and hiding. When she sees him, the first thing she does is call him Dad, and the Golem tries to continue with his work as usual, but Somali starts chasing after him and keeps calling him Dad. The Golem tries to convince himself that it's not his job to take care of a little girl because he knows he should never get involved in those things, but Somali follows him, and she's so sweet that he feels sorry for her. Hearing her stomach growl, Golem decides to intervene a bit and offers her food, but with the promise that he will continue on his way afterward. He tries to find out about Somali, but she knows nothing. Golem works with Somali following him. He feeds her quietly. His job is to care for the forest, and Somali asks if he feels lonely. Even though he pretends not to care about her, he has added another task to his many daily chores, which is to get food for her without talking to her. One day, Golem explains to her that his job is to take care of the forest, and Somali asks him if he doesn't feel lonely. The Golem replies that no, since he doesn't have feelings, but Somali assures him that now he will never be alone again because she will be by his side. While looking for fish for Somali, part of Golem's arm comes off, and Somali gets worried and jumps into the river to look for his arm. But the Golem explains to her that it's useless and that she shouldn't put herself at risk for something like that. That night, the Golem realizes that he has little time left and that when he disappears, the chances of Somali surviving will be slim. So he decides to take her back to the humans, and that's how their journey begins. He names her Somali because the cat that found her is of the Somali breed. In the present, Shizuno Shizuno asks the golem about the state of his body, and when he removes his cloak, we see that 70% of his body has already come off from the rocky part, which would be like his skin. As his end is near, the golem asks Shizuno to take care of Somali when he is no longer in this world, and Shizuno promises that he will. The golem assures that he realized it too late, but the journey began simply because he wanted to see Somali smile more often. The next day, the men leave the inn to work as bodyguards for 7 days and ask Shizuno to take care of Somali, explaining point by point what Somali likes and what she needs to be careful about. That night, when they return, Somali hugs the golem because it's the first time they've been apart for so long. The next day, they both go to work again, and they remind them that they will bring provisions that day. While the women are cleaning, Somali finds a bit of wool and decides to make a gift for the golem, but she isn't quite sure what it will be. At that moment, Rosa, the innkeeper's wife, appears with the supplies, and upon seeing the yarn, she decides to help them and teach them how to make friendship bands, which are like yarn bracelets meant to wish good luck to the person who receives them. That night, Rosa tells some bandits that there's a human in that cabin, which means she has betrayed them. On the last day of work for the golem and Yabashira, Rosa tells them that it's dangerous to take the normal road west because it's full of thieves, and she offers to show them a new path that few know about to keep Somali safe. Before returning to the inn, the men buy all the necessary supplies for the trip, and the golem stands in front of a gift shop thinking about Somali. When they arrive home, Somali happily gives him a friendship band that she has been making for him all those days, and the golem gives her a friendship band that he bought at the market for her, so they both have a friendship band on their arm. Before leaving and making dinner, Shizuno suggests having a snowball fight to celebrate their farewell from the place, so everyone has a wonderful last day. However, later on, the golem feels a strange presence, and with his supervision, he can see in the distance a group of human hunters. Yabashira asks why they are there if there are no humans, and Shizuno reveals Somali's secret, assuring them that she will help because they are friends. Yabashira decides to help Somali as well, so when the group of human hunters arrives, he acts as a decoy, assuring them that there are no humans there and fighting the hunters when they try to confront him. While the other three walk along the path that Rosa showed them, confident that they can escape because there's no one around, they then run into a group of hunters that isn't the same group that was at the inn. When they get trapped against a cliff, the golem jumps with the two girls and uses his rocky wings to slow their fall, but he uses so much of his power that his body starts to creak more than it should. The three continue walking toward the exit when they find a staircase leading to the surface, and then Rosa appears there with the hunters and traps the three of them, saying that she will let Golem and Shizuno go, but that Somali will stay there with them. Then she tells them a story, saying that 200 years ago, when she was still a little girl, Rosa lived near a secret village of humans, and their villages lived together in peace without interfering with each other. One day, a human boy was attacked by a pack of wolves. A being risked its life to save him, but when it took him back to his family, the humans ended up killing it, and that situation happened many times. That's why, ever since then, everyone agrees that it's not possible to live with humans, even though they tried, because they are violent. Rosa starts singing the same song that Kiki sang at that moment, and then Somali realizes that the way the song goes is all about how to eliminate humans. The hunters draw their swords and decide to start cutting Somali into pieces, and Rosa asks for her liver. The golem tries to stretch out his threatening arm to prevent them from taking Somali, but then his arm completely breaks and he falls to the ground. With no other choice, the golem uses all the strength in its body. One sphere of energy begins to glow inside its chest and Golem stands up. Stronger and more threatening than the golem, it begins the conversion of the spiritual limit and internal heat. From the bright energy inside its chest, other bright lights that look like fire come out, and with that, it attacks its surrounding. After this, he starts making a super strange otherworldly noise, and the hunters get scared because they think he's a real monster, so they decide to flee. But the golem won't let them escape and begins to chase them down, defeating them one by one with a completely evil demeanor that no one has ever seen before, as if something more monstrous were controlling him. Yabashira tries to confront him to stop him from destroying Rosa, but the golem throws him against the wall, ready to destroy destroy the woman who sold them out to the hunters. Then Somali stands in front of Rosa and asks her not to hurt anyone because she doesn't want to see others get hurt. The golem sets aside his monstrous behavior and gently strokes Somali's head like he always did, returning to his usual self, but just seconds later, he faints. When the golem wakes up, he's in the forest and Somali is sleeping on him. Then the two cheerful Oni appear, happy to see him awake, but the golem doesn't remember anything that happened and they try to explain to him roughly what went down. The golem is bandaged up and the arm he lost won't be able to recover, but he walks alongside Somali without knowing how much time he really has left. Even though he tries to go on with his life as usual, his body no longer responds like it used to. Sos, Eos, is losing fluids, his hearing and vision have worsened considerably. He can no longer make complex movements, so he will soon stop functioning. Shizuno assures that she will try to help him no matter what, and they finally arrive in the city just in time for the harvest festival, so everything around them is festive and cheerful. Then Somali learns about the wind-riding flowers that are used to welcome the souls of their ancestors. If float one of those flowers, the light will guide the spirit of a grandmother or grandfather back to the place where they were once happy. Even though Golem doesn't believe in this, one of the visitors tells him that there is something after the end and that souls can return to their loved ones. In the middle of the festival, the Golem sees Somali happy and being taken care of by the Onis, and he decides to leave so that Somali doesn't have to see him in such a terrible state. Shizen doesn't explain this to everyone when they realize that Golem is no longer with them. Somali starts running around everywhere to find him, and the Golem tells her that he can't continue the journey with her. Somali starts crying desperately, reminding him of his promise, but the Golem explains that if he loses control again, it could put her in danger, so they need to stay away from him. Somali tells him she'll feel lonely without him. Somali's actions show he does have emotions. Finally, the Golem accepts he has emotions and wants to stay with her as her father. He promises to stay with Somali forever, and they hold hands, continuing their journey with the Onis. Finally, the Golem accepts that he does have emotions, a heart, and that he wants to stay with her and be her father, even if it means facing the whole world to do so. So he promises to stay with Somali forever, and they hold hands and decide to continue their journey together with the Onis, even though they don't know how long the poor Golem's life will last. I usually don't leave a comment at the end, but I hope you enjoyed this video.